Welcome, everyone, to the Diamond edition of the It's Personal podcast. I am so excited to share with you the wisdom of my guest today. Please help me welcome Nikkie Achartz to the podcast. Nikkie, please tell us who you are, what you do, and what makes you unique.
Oh, Carrie, thank you so much for the invitation. I was so excited to be a part of this. I'm Nikkie Achartz, and I am a pricing and profitability consultant and a business growth strategist. I help female founders make more money and then keep more of the money that they make. My goal is to move the less than 2% of the female founders that never break a million. So I want to move that dial by the time I step back.
Love that.
So by the time I step back, I want that number to change.
I love that so much. And I also love that you focus not just on making more, but keeping more, right? Because when we
Right.
put money in the hands of good people, we make the world a better place because they do good things with it. And if we're not keeping it and we don't have those strategies and systems in place and we can't hold it, then none of the work that people put into it matters, right? So I would love to start by, Nikki and I met at a women's event. And I was just about to say networking event. It was not a networking event. The
Oh,
founder
bad words.
Yes, the founder of this group is kind of anti-networking, which I love. And so the benefit of that is we get to get real fast with, other women who are growing their businesses. And so Nikki and I happen to be in a small group conversation together. And one of the things that we talked about was your background around trauma-informed care and how you integrate that into growth strategies. And I think it's a really important concept that we draw out because I think number one, it makes you super unique because anybody can grow and grind and burn themselves out. Like we can all do that, right? But when we allow the growth that comes with a business, personally, then we're able to scale so much faster. So, can you just tell us, first and foremost, how did you get into the trauma-informed side of business growth, and why is it so important for us?
So the before times, in the before times, when my father was go to school, get a degree, have a career, I took a gap year because I actually started kindergarten early and then I skipped a grade. So I was 16 my senior year. And so I decided to take a gap year and go and do service overseas with my best friend in England and Scotland. And while we were traveling the continent, she was sexually assaulted at gunpoint on a crowded street in Italy. And yeah, it was very disruptive. And here I'm 18, she's 18. We don't speak the language. It was an absolute nightmare trying to find her care. The way she was treated by police was absolutely horrific. And so when I came home, I was like, oh, yeah, I want to be a part of how the United States does this better. And so I started volunteering as a sexual assault victims advocate. So I was an acute responder. This was old school before cell phones. So in the book, like I said, it was the before times. I had a pager that would go off at 2 in the morning, and it would be like, we have a 14-year-old victim, ETA to the SART unit, and I would help the victim get through questioning by detectives as well as the rape kit from the forensics nurse. And I went to school and fell in love with psychology and sociology. Really got bit by the bug, where I loved how the brain affected behavior and how behavior impacted the brain. And so it became really fascinating to me. And then after I did sexual assault victims advocacy for 6 years, I fried out on that. I didn't do politics well. I did protective well. And I may or may not have let a judge and a detective have it and was invited not to do that job anymore. And then I ended up working with foster care kids. So I went from an acute trauma and learning how to cope with acute trauma to cumulative and collective trauma, working with 187 teenagers who were never going to go home. And it was my job to prepare them to be adults because at 18, the system packs their bags and says, you're out. So we fell in love with a kid on the campus and wanted to take her home with us, which was not going to be doable while I was still working at the campus because I took her home and 186 kids go. How come she went home and I didn't go home? And so my husband just said to me, like, you've kind of been grinding at this for 12 years. Like, what is it that you really want to do? And I said, honestly, I've just always wanted to be a photographer. I fell in love with it in 10th grade. I'm like, but that wasn't a legit job, right? That was not what my father, who, instilled those things, that's not a legit job. So that Christmas, I got all my gear and a note from my husband that said, I got your back, go get your dreams so we can go get our kid. And so I launched a photography company. And it took 2 years, and we were finally able to get custody of our oldest, now oldest. We had a baby in between there. And I really had no idea what that intersection was going to be, how trauma had anything to do with photography. And then my father, because first round of funding is always friends, family, and fools. So I went to my dad and I said, can you fund my photography company? And he said, okay, but you have to go out and do research. And you've got to come back and tell me what makes a successful photographer and what makes an unsuccessful photographer. And so I came back to him and he's like, did you figure it out? And I said, yeah, Dad, like it's crazy. There are some really talented photographers out there and they are broke as a joke. Like they have no money. And I said, and then there's ones that, quite honestly, Dad, I'm not that impressed. And they're making money hand over fist. And he's like, yep. And what's the difference? And I said, business knowledge. And he said, exactly. So here's the deal, I'll invest, but for every photography training, you have to take 2 business trainings. And so by the time I had run my company 10 years, I had like a street MBA because I love taking photography trainings and I had to hold up my end of the deal. And so I took a bunch of business classes and I joined a female inspired co-working accelerator and incubator out in San Diego, California. And the founder of it and the angel investor behind it sat me down and said, we don't think branding photography is defensible in 5 years. I was getting 600% above industry standard at the time. And they said, you're going to get flooded by portrait photographers. It's going to be a race to the bottom. We heard you won't photograph a female founder unless she has a viable business plan or business model. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't want her pouring good money after bad. I mean, if she doesn't have a way to make money, why would she invest in marketing images? And they're like, okay, explain to us what you're doing. And I explained it and they said, oh, you're pricing and profitability. I'm like, I'm a what? And they encouraged me. And so I just started down that path. And then COVID hit. And where I had never seen where trauma would intersect with business became very clear. There were articles being put out by the Wall Street Journal. There was a whole bunch of issues where they were like, we're not prepared for this. We don't know how to manage ourselves, our teams, our clients. Like, we don't know what's going on. We have no roadmap for this. And I said to myself, yes, you do. It's just in behavioral science. It's just not in business, but it's there. They're not acting crazy. You're not crazy. Your team's not crazy. Your clients aren't crazy. They're traumatized. And so I ended up speaking virtually, obviously, all over the country on trauma informed business and sales strategies. So really, it was COVID that smushed it all together.
Wow, that is quite a journey.
It
And,
was.
one of the takeaways that I think is really important is that we start with this idea and we think we need to know where it goes. We think we need to know, okay, what am I building? I've got this mission and this goal. And the fact of the matter is we just need to take the next step because we
Yeah,
can't possibly see where this is headed if we don't take the next step, right? And
correct.
literally your first step to where you are now was going to Europe at 16 years old.
Yeah,
And sadly your friend experienced that horrible tragedy, but you made good of it. And I think that
right.
that one of the things I really connected with you about was the power of story, the
Mhm.
power of how we use adversity as our superpower. And, there are 2 ways to look at it, right? We can look at it as the victim or
Mhm.
someone else being the victim. and we can say what's the action we can take? What can we do about this now? And I love how you highlighted within your story, you had different guides along the way, different
Yes.
support systems. You know, your dad is genius and brilliant, and what an awesome way to support his child who he thought was probably making the dumbest move she could make is like, all right,
He
girl.
really did.
Yeah.
He really did. But I think he was used to it after the fact that my dad had a degree in chemistry and a master's degree in human factors engineering. And my mom was a biochemist and an immunologist. And so the fact that I went into the soft sciences of what's this psych hooey, I think he was already kind of worn down at that point when I came in with a new idea.
Yes. Yes. And also to have your husband be like, go do it. Go do
Yep.
it. You know, I think so many, it makes a difference when you surround yourself with people who may not see your vision, but actually support you and your
Right.
capability. Because I think, especially in the beginning, we feel like we're playing pretend, right?
Right.
We're like, can
Right.
I do this? Who am I being? Right. And so I love that part of your story was to have these people around you in your life that supported you. I'm curious when you work with women
Mhm.
who come to you, they probably don't know that they need trauma informed growth strategies, right?
No.
So tell me what this really looks like when a woman comes to you. Are they coming to you with an idea? Are they coming to you with a business that they're grinding away in? And how do you insert these types of strategies and how does it help them grow?
So the one thing I will say is because I live in internal curiosity, I can, and I'm a little neurospicy, as my oldest likes to call it, instead of neurodiversity. She's like, Mom, we're just neurospicy. Um, is I can get bored easily. And it was something that I found consistent with female founders that stalled them out is they never finished what they started because they would they would describe it as they would get bored. What I really think was happening was that they were trying to be somebody else, following a roadmap that didn't align with who they were and what their nervous systems were. So it's one of those things where I work with women who feel like they're like kind of accidental entrepreneurs. You know, they're like, I'm accidentally making money, but there's like not a purpose, like how they're doing it. It's kind of like, well, whoever shows up, it's like, okay, well, I'll go make money there. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of accidentally making money and that's not on purpose. But I also get them where they're the choke point. So one of the common things that we found in family dynamic theory in the 1990s, I actually wrote a paper on it before I graduated, was that men were happiness were tied to spouse and children. Yep, they would say, "Are you happy?" Yeah, wife's happy, kids are happy. Yep, didn't ask about the wife and kids, asked if you were happy. Yep, everybody's great. Wife's doing great, kids are great, I'm great. Okay. Women don't care who's happy around them. That has nothing to do with our role of happiness. And what they linked was that it was the number of roles that we were occupying. The higher number of roles we were occupying, the higher the happiness quotient. So I ended up writing a paper in 93, I think, where I said, I don't find this sustainable. I find that if this is truly what's going on, and I linked it back to the women's movement, our moms and grandmothers wanted us to be able to occupy any role we wanted. And instead, the translation was we needed to occupy every role. And I wrote that paper saying this is displacing the masculine out of the space. This is displacing, this is going to put burnout on because no human being can be all things to all people at all times. And so what I was noticing is that's what shows up in business. It's the reason they're not punching through, the reason they're not scaling, the reason they're not going is because they've become attached to these roles that they have and that is what gives them value. And if they give up those roles, then what? The other thing I noticed is that they find something they're passionate about and they start a business and then they try to find somebody who's willing to buy it. Whereas the masculine identifies gaps in marketplaces and says, I can crawl into there, like I can create something there. So frequently it's when the smaller they start a business and they market to themselves 5 steps back, which isn't viable for long-term growth. I remember, I think one of the first 2 years I had my business partner with a photography business, we were sitting down at lunch, and I looked at her. I'm like, you realize that we can't afford us? Like I, like it was that notion of we're running this business, we're charging these rates, but we're still poor, and yet we were full, like we, and I was just like, there's got to be something wrong with this. Like, it is it are we the choke, like what is the problem here? And I really realized that it surrounded value, perceived value of ourselves. It was, how do you do sales properly, how do you systemize it? So I started doing a whole bunch of deep dives into sales psychology and to the things that were limiting us. I just happened to get lucky that my business partner, former now, but we're still really good friends, was also a social worker. Like both of us had done photography as like self-care. And so we were really into the trauma thoughts of it. It was like, why are we doing this? What's the broken part? And I just started seeing it in everyone. So frequently I'll get a female founder who will just say, I want to keep growing and I can't grow anymore. Like I'm at 60 hours a week. I'm exhausted. I don't know how to, I feel like I've reached the level of knowledge that I know and I just can't punch through. And so it just takes a different perspective. But what's important is it's not a one size fits all. And so one of the things I do when I'm working with clients is I'm watching micro expressions on their face. I'm watching body language. I'm listening to how they breathe. I pay attention to their voice. If I'm giving an idea and that voice pinches or they sit back or they do a micro grimace, oop, that strategy I just put up, that doesn't align with them. Something's in there that's too squishy. We need to move because that won't action. They won't take action on it because it doesn't align with them. So that's the piece that I think they don't know they're coming to me for trauma informed anything. It's just me paying very close attention to the signals that they're giving off that they probably aren't even aware that they're
Yes, and so you're just really applying all of your massive background and
right.
training to alleviate the constraints that they're experiencing.
Correct.
And
The parts where they get fearful and when I can go, that's nice, feel the fear, do it anyway. Um, or it's this is misaligned. So that's different. Fear of something, fear is the amygdala just going, I've never done this before, so this feels unsafe. That you can push through, that can be leveraged through. But a misalignment, something that is triggering to them or out of alignment to them, that is not something you push through. That is something that has to be massaged to get where you need to go. So it's just reading the room is basically,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. And that's a skill set, that is a
yeah,
skill set that not everyone has. And that's why the formula to success is be, do, have. If you
right,
are not being the person who not just can create at the next level, but hold at the next level.
right,
I have experience in my own business and in clients will reach this big milestone and then go right back down because we haven't built the identity
right.
along with it. And so the importance of that identity is like we look at different opportunities through a different lens. Like there are opportunities that start coming to us when we elevate our identity that we couldn't see before
Right.
because we weren't being that person. We make decisions at a different level. We change our risk profile. So, how do you help your clients change that risk profile? So, if they're scared, you guys are working through a
Mhm.
strategy and you're seeing the path and they're like, "Oh, I don't know." How do you help them? Like, what is your association with that risk
Mhm.
tolerance
Mhm.
where risk equals reward, but you see your clients as nope, nope, risk adverse. I'm using my past self to make this decision and she doesn't want to get burned again, right? So like how I think so many people, and it sounds like your clients who are grinding away, it's almost like they can't take their foot off the gas to look at it in a different way because it's working, but they're exhausted and all of those things. So how do you help them really kind of look up and see a different way?
So, couple factors. One is we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And so the issue is just saying to them, congratulations, you're normal, that you have blind spots. So the whole thing is to normalize as much as possible failure. So back to the my dad and being the incredible dad he never said you're failing. So if we failed, we'd be like, I failed. And he's like, no, you didn't. You're either winning or you're learning. So whenever we would make a mistake, trip, fall, make a bonehead decision, say something ridiculous, he would say, what did you learn? And it was like, I learned this. And he'd be like, you gonna make the same mistake again? And I was like, no. And he's like, great. Then that's the end of the conversation. You learned. And it was normalizing that they invested in the wrong people, that the talent, they went out of sequence. It's just going, congratulations, you're normal. And that comes from the fact that men are shame phobic and women are shame sensitive. We feel shame at the drop of a hat. So taking that and going, I'm tossing that out. So that's one thing, is just going, congratulations, you're normal, which you'll hear in almost all of my sessions. At some point, I'll go, oh, congratulations, you just made a normal mistake. What did you learn? The other thing is, even though I have a degree in psych, I am very cognizantly aware of my lane. I am not a therapist. I never chose to go down that path. They call me a coach. I don't really feel like I identify as a coach because I think coaches are inherently not bossy and I'm pretty bossy. So I think that's more a consultant's role. Um, and so one of the things that my dad was really good at was mindset coming out and math coming in. So one of the main things I say is, we're going to run numbers. The price tag is the price tag is the price tag. We've run the budget. We know who you want to hire in the next year. We know what we have to stash away for working capital. We know what we have to stash away for growth capital, which is an important account for female founders. It's one of the reasons we don't grow, is because we typically have to take a pay cut in order to bring somebody on. If we store extra money, one, it increases our tolerance for, I have a right to keep extra money at the end of the month and not just get by, but have extra. Great. Well, I manage your nervous system. I'll say it goes into a growth account. So the next hire you can hire doesn't affect your paycheck whatsoever. But really, it's about them learning to have extra at the end of the month and to build up that
Yes.
muscle, you know?
Yeah, that
And then
overflow is huge.
yeah, it's huge because when they go, wow, and it's like, see, you weren't being greedy, you were running a business. And so I have a whole talk I give on making data, not drama driven business decisions, because I always go back to data. I go, yeah, I get you're having feelings about all of this, but we're back to the data. What is the numbers telling us? What is the key profitability indicators telling us? Because we can make up, women are very good at making up stories. Man, are we good storytellers. 99% of it is total BS. Um, so,
Yes.
and the data doesn't lie. So the science, thank God for my parents being scientists, because it was always, why do you believe that? Well, where'd you get that information from? Did you double check the sources? And so it's always like, go back to the data. So typically when it's like setting a price tag, I'm like, well, how many hours is it going to take you to do this? And how much is that going to cost? And what do you need to bring home? And what's the business need? Great. It's that number of hours times that times hourly. There's your price tag. This isn't open for mindset. That's the number. Like, that's it. That's the price tag. Figure out how to sell that price tag. And if the people you currently are talking to can't afford it, then we can go find somebody who can. Or if the industry won't support it, then how do we hire multiple people, scale rapidly, and stack the profit from each of their work on top of the income to make her private? So yeah, it's mostly mindset, a whole lot of strategy, but it's always data driven so that the fifis stay out of it.
The fifis. Yeah. I mean, feelings aren't facts, but they certainly feel like it in the moment, right? And I
Thousand
think
percent.
I think that
1000%.
when you bring that into female business ownership, it is so important because our superpower is the ability to feel our feelings. Like
Yes.
that skill set has made me hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And yet, when we don't allow the feelings to flow and we use them as data, that's when we stall our growth. And I love how you've touched on a couple of different times the difference between men and women in business. And there is a difference. Men
Yeah.
are taught to logically find the gap in the market. Women are taught to go after your passion. And so
Yes.
then we take everything so personally because it's our passion. I
Right.
I was with my niece last week who just had a baby, and we were laughing about how we tie our milk supply to our worth as a human,
Yes. Oh
right?
my gosh. Yes.
And
Yes.
it is just my son is into ski racing now, and my husband tunes his skis. And so one of the coaches recently told my husband that my son's skis were dull, and he took it as this personal affront to his worth. And we were laughing. I'm like, see, this is what it's like to be a woman and tie your worth to your breath,
Output.
to your,
Your
yes, to your
literal
output,
output.
to your literal
Your
output
literal
from your
output.
body. Yes. And he's like, yeah, that left boob is still dead to me. But it's so funny how that applies to the decisions that women make. And that's why the work that you do is so important, because when we pretend to make logical decisions and we ignore the superpower of our
Mhm.
emotions, then we just make decisions that add more pressure. And so
Right.
I'd love for you to just like address, and I know that you are the primary breadwinner in your
Yep.
family. You've raised these three girls and are raising. I think it's really important to talk about how you take that pressure that as humans we feel
Hmm.
and how you really transmute it into something that allows you to grow your business.
I like to say that my superpower is finding patterns in chaos. Because what can look like chaos to a lot of people, I go, but if we put that there, that there, that there, that there, then this pattern lines up. And so I would I would probably say that the greatest growth edge I've had is because I came from highly intellectual parents. Most of the language you'll hear me say is I think, I learned, my kids joke that on my tombstone, they're going to write, she was just curious, because they'll find me at 3 in the morning down some rabbit hole. And they're like, what did you get curious about now? I'm like, well, I saw the show and then I wondered how legit it was historically. So then I went down and did you know? And they're like, oh my God, mom, it's 3 in the morning, go to bed. So the innate curiosity is what I genuinely think is a superpower of business growth, is to be curious. When you have a feeling, go, why am I having that feeling? That innate curiosity. Is there other ways for me to get around this other than what the bro marketers or the whatever else has said is what aligns with me? What was interesting was for me, and I think I still struggle with this, so I respect that it comes from my clients as well, is knowing the difference between intuition and instinct is fear driven. And it's important we have it. It is what keeps us alive. Instinct is important. But intuition isn't the same thing as instinct. And that is an important delineation, because when something is aligned, you don't feel the relief of fear. You feel even and grounded and anchored. It's not that, whereas when you go to make a decision and all of a sudden you stop feeling so afraid, that is actually an instinctual decision, not an intuitive decision. And learning how to feel that in a body for someone who is highly intellectual has been a real growth edge on, wait a minute, am I having an instinctual reaction or am I having an intuitive reaction, a
Yeah.
response? Instinctual
Yeah.
reaction versus intuitive response to what's
Yes.
coming. So,
Yes. It's a nuanced and yet important distinction, because the breakthrough is always on the other side of massive self-doubt. And that self-doubt is just a signal that we haven't become the person. So we feel like we're not ready. But the
Right.
way you become ready and become the person is you take that next level action and then do the energetic and emotional work around that to calm your nervous system and to step into that piece. And I think that people who are I see this a lot in people kind of changing their mind. Well, I just get it's a gut instinct. I just feel like I shouldn't do that. I should do this, and this isn't working, so I should do this. And it's like you mentioned your clients they're lacking finisher energy, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
like, well, I'm just bored. It's like business is not supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be boring. We're supposed to have the foundations that actually work. So we have the capacity to go do those exciting things with our families and travel and all of the things, right? So
Well, it's also CEO energy versus technician energy. So when you look at the E Myth, it for women, we're bored because we're in the technician. So this thing that we were passionate about, we now had to try and make money at and build systems and processes and things. And so we're bored. What I love is getting them excited to be in the CEO mindset because CEOs, like I liken it to driving a car. I'm like, it's terribly boring when all you're doing is looking at the inside of your freaking car. It's boring. Yeah, I mean, it's a small space. But when you can clear the windshield out in front of you and you trust that there are team members and stakeholders that are running the inside of the car, there's the lawyers who are looking in the rearview mirror, make sure nothing runs up and bites you in the booty. The CEO energy is innovative. It is where am I going? It is what's the next target market? Where's my growth edge? Like in and of itself, taking savvy CEO energy will cure the boredom. It's just how you channel it, right? And owning it is taking a step away from the technician. And I try to explain that to them when you're doing an exit strategy. I'm like, I need you 100% replaceable for this business to be worth money. Because if you're irreplaceable, then somebody can't take it over from you and still have it run. And so it's just a major mindset shift.
it is. And I think that the biggest revenue plateau cause is centering ourselves in our business. And so learning to decenter when you're at $1 million is like, that's hard because it feels irresponsible. It feels, or whether your milestone is 100K, five, whatever it
Right,
is,
right,
it
right.
just feels irresponsible because what you've been doing works, right? So
Yes.
it's again that identity build, that trust, and then the strategies come on top of that. So,
It's
Nikki,
also, let me just share this really
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
A couple of things too is realizing that most of the psychological research that are out there around trauma is white hetero cis male. So we look at ourselves and we go, am I in fight, flight, or freeze? We're in none of those because those are masculine hetero cis responses to trauma. We came from an environment anthropologically and evolutionarily where we had to clump together in groups to protect ourselves and to protect our kids. If we were going to fight somebody every time we were stressed, we wouldn't be allowed to stay in the group. If we were going to run away, then we've just left the safety of the group and now we're at risk. And we can't just freeze because then we're not contributing to the group anymore. So we tend and we befriend and we just quit. We fold. And what that comes from means that the way we go into business and the way we navigate growth is always through that stressed lens. So when I look at someone, when I work with the few men that I do work with, and I do really enjoy working with them, excuse me, I say to them, I said, if she comes in and she's been baking all weekend and she like comes in with 85 cookies and sweet, she is not okay. Like she is stressed out. That was not for fun. She's not like, woo, I'll just do that. She's tending. I said, when you see a difficult team member who is bullying and she is like trying to bring her coffee and trying to do her work for her, and you're like, why are you trying to befriend a bully? She's befriending because she thinks if I can win her over, then I'm no longer under threat. So when we come to discounting with before even somebody asks us, when we look at price point, when we look at all of that, it comes from this anthropological base of how do I keep the status quo? And so we're hardwired for it. So it is a bigger reach for us to step away and say, I don't need to be your friend. I am the CEO. I don't have to take care of everyone around me. Like, and I'm going to be okay. And they're going to be okay. And everything's going to be okay.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay
Yeah.
to not try to befriend everybody. It's okay. Or you can be friends, but that isn't at the sacrifice of your own well being. So, yeah, it's just important.
Right. Right. It's why so many women friend zone potential clients and,
Or
just,
over deliver,
yeah.
or just,
Yeah.
I mean, all of it. When you
Yeah.
realize, when I speak to women in groups, I actually just recently spoke to a group of female realtors, real estate agents, and they were like, yeah, our guy counterparts like don't discount, they don't throw in staging for free, they don't do blah 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 blah. We don't understand. So I went through not just the 10 befriend fold, but a bunch of other contributing factors to why the feminine energy struggles with sales and scale. And you could hear the audience going, oh, I do that. Oh, I know I do that. And so I think that part of the first step is just the awareness of where it's coming from so we can stop. Like, I don't necessarily
Yeah.
believe in imposter syndrome. I think it's BS. I think that's the patriarchy trying to tell us that something's wrong with us, like yet something else that we have to take responsibility for, when in reality, like you said, it's the construct of the masses will leap and build underneath as they go. We want everything perfect before we take a step. Like you said, our risk tolerance is much, 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 much lower. And I don't think that's imposter syndrome. I think that's us telling us that we're inherent. I mean, I think that's the society we've grown up in telling us that if we're not perfect, then we have no business growing,
Yes.
which is
And
ridiculous.
yes, yes.
Sorry.
We could go down a rabbit hole on that
Oh,
one
that one,
for
right?
sure, right? So, and I think the bottom line on that is imposter syndrome is simply you valuing other people's opinions of yourself over your own capability and your own opinion
Or
of
your
yourself.
own thinks to yourself, when you think it's your voice in your head and then you track it back and you realize it was something somebody said and you're like, whoa, that wasn't even my voice, but somehow in my head it got to be my voice.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
exactly.
Well, Nikki, if others want to follow you or continue this conversation or work with you, where can they find you?
So I am Snap, SNAP, Savvy. There's two V's. It looks wrong. One V, it looks wrong with two V's. I should have thought that through when I picked the brand name. Sap Savvy Strategies, plural.com. And then they can also follow me on LinkedIn if that is a good place. We put out a lot of content. I have a great marketing team, so they can find me there. On the
Awesome.
website, there's a lot of resources, trainings that I've done that they can click on and watch and start to get an idea, both the data side as well as the anthropological and the trauma side.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll have all of that information in the show notes as well. But Nikki, I so appreciate you taking the time. This has been really enlightening and just a joy to have this conversation. Thank
Oh, I'm
you.
glad. Thank you so much for the invite.
You're welcome.